7 young gangsters, hungry for power, begin openly terrorizing all of Harlem, even threatening Bumpy Johnson himself. But has Bumpy grown too old to stop a generation that no longer lives by the old gangster code? Subscribe if you're fascinated by the untold legends of Harlem streets. Grab a cup of tea, we're just getting started. 6:47, Harlem opens its eyes. Not all at once. One window, one stove, one lock, then another. A delivery truck coughs beside the curb. Milk bottles touch concrete. A broom moves dust from one doorway to the next. The city does not wake, it assembles itself. Piece by piece, noise by noise. Routine is the oldest agreement a neighborhood has. Break enough routines, and the neighborhood stops recognizing itself. 7:19. Mr. Bell unlocks his butcher shop. He is 63. He has opened the same door 6 mornings a week for 27 years. Rain, snow, blackouts, funerals. Nothing has ever changed the hour. He turns the sign. Open. Then he sees the chalk mark on the glass. A white circle, drawn during the night. No words, no name, just a circle. His assistant asks what it means. Mr. Bell wipes it away. Some warnings are frightening because they are clear. Others are worse because they force you to imagine the meaning yourself. 7:56. 3 blocks away, a young man walks into a small bakery. No hat, no gloves, no attempt to hide his face. He takes a sweet roll from the tray, bites into it, then points toward the register. The baker stares at him. The young man smiles. Not kindly, not angrily, like the answer has already been given. Everything from yesterday. The baker looks toward the street. People are passing. A woman pushes a stroller. A bus stops at the corner. The city is watching. That does not mean the city will help. Witnesses are everywhere. Courage is harder to locate. 8:02. The baker places an envelope on the counter. The young man weighs it in his hand. Too light. He says nothing. He reaches behind the counter and removes a framed photograph. The baker with his wife. 2 children standing between them. Sunday clothes. Careful smiles. The young man studies it, then returns it to the exact same place. You'll do better tomorrow. He leaves with the envelope. No broken glass. No raised voice. No weapon shown. Terror becomes efficient when it no longer needs proof. 8:38. The story reaches the next street before the young man does. A barber hears it from a customer. A customer tells a cab driver. The cab driver tells a woman at a newsstand. By 9 o'clock, the story has changed 4 times. In one version, there were 3 men. In another, the baker was beaten. In another, the photograph was taken. Fear is a poor historian, but an excellent messenger. 9/11. 7 young men gather outside a pool hall. Nobody calls them a gang yet. Names come later, after patterns, after damage, after people become too frightened to say the names they already know. They are young. The oldest is 29. The youngest cannot be more than 21. Sharp coats, bright ties, polished shoes. They look less like soldiers, and more like men dressed for a photograph. Their leader is called Calvin Reed. Tall, narrow face. A pale scar beneath his left ear. He smiles often, not because he is happy, because smiling makes other people uncertain about when the danger begins. 9:27. Calvin looks through the pool hall window. Inside, men stop talking. A queue remains raised over green felt. Nobody takes the shot. Calvin notices. He enjoys it. Respect and fear can look identical from across a room. Young men rarely learn the difference until one of them disappears. 9:44. The 7 enter. They do not ask permission. They do not greet the owner. They choose the largest table. One man sits on it. Another opens a bottle he brought with him. Calvin removes a folded newspaper from his coat. He spreads it over the felt. The owner approaches, slowly. This is a respectable place. Calvin looks around. Old ceiling fans, cracked lamps, men pretending not to listen. Then respect us. Soft words, flat voice. A threat does not need volume, it needs certainty. IC 10:06. The owner tells them the pool hall is protected. He does not say by whom. He does not need to. Some names are strongest when left outside the sentence. Calvin folds the newspaper, carefully, corner to corner. Then he looks at the owner. Protected from what? No answer. Calvin nods. That's what I thought. The 7 leave without paying. They take 2 bottles, 1 gold watch, and the owner's certainty. The watch can be replaced. Certainty cannot. 10:31. A school crossing guard watches them move down the avenue. 7 men. Wide formation. No hurry. Traffic bends around them. Pedestrians step aside. Even people who do not know them feel the shape of the danger. Power is often noticed before it is understood, like smoke beneath a door. 11:03. At a repair garage, one of the 7 points to a black sedan. I like this one. The mechanic says it belongs to a customer. The young man gets into the driver's seat. He adjusts the mirror, checks the horn, starts the engine. The mechanic stands beside the open door. His hands are stained with oil. His voice is not steady. You can't take it. The young man looks at the grease beneath the mechanic's fingernails. Then stop me. The engine idles. The mechanic does nothing. The sedan pulls away. A man can spend 20 years learning a trade and lose authority over his own hands in 10 seconds. 11:46. The police receive the first complaint, then the second. A sergeant writes down half a description. Young, black coat, maybe gray, tall, maybe average, no plate number, no weapon seen, no witness willing to sign. The paper remains almost empty. Law likes details. Fear erases them. 12:18. Lunch begins across Harlem. Plates, steam, coffee cups, coins beside registers. But conversations keep returning to the same 7 men. Nobody agrees on where they came from. Brooklyn, the Bronx, Philadelphia, maybe farther. Nobody knows who finances them. Nobody knows where they sleep. Nobody knows why they chose Harlem. Mystery gives weak men size. The unknown is always taller than the truth. 12:52. At a clothing store, Calvin tries on a dark overcoat. Italian wool, hand-stitched lining. The owner tells him the price. Calvin looks into the mirror, turns once. The coat fits well. Put it on my account. The owner swallows. You don't have an account. Calvin studies his reflection. I do now. The owner says nothing. Calvin wears the coat out. Behind him, the bell above the door rings once. Small sound. Large surrender. 13:24. Across the street, an elderly woman has seen everything. She has lived in Harlem longer than Calvin has been alive. She waits until the 7 turn the corner. Then she enters the store. The owner is still standing beside the mirror. She asks why he let them leave. He looks at her. I have children. She nods. That explains everything. Fear does not always make cowards. Sometimes it simply reminds men what they can lose. 13:49. The 7 divide. 2 enter a restaurant. 1 visits a pawn shop. 3 remain near the avenue. Calvin walks alone. He wants people to see that he can. A leader surrounded by men shows protection. A leader walking alone shows belief. Whether the belief is justified, that comes later. 14:17. A florist refuses them. Her name is Miriam Shaw, 48 years old, widowed, small hands, straight back. One of Calvin's men demands the afternoon receipts. She closes the register. No. The word surprises him. He looks toward Calvin. Calvin stands near the doorway, watching, not helping, not stopping him. The young man knocks over a bucket of white carnations. Water crosses the floor. Flowers scatter beneath his shoes. Miriam does not move. He sweeps a row of vases from a shelf. Glass breaks. She still does not move. Some people shake before courage. Others shake after. But they're 14:24. Calvin finally raises one finger. The destruction stops. He walks through the broken glass, picks up one white carnation, places it on the counter. Then he speaks quietly. "We'll come back tomorrow." Miriam looks at the flower. "Come back with money." For the first time that day, Calvin's smile disappears. Only for a moment. But a moment is enough. Pride is a thin wall. Even a small sentence can crack it. 14:39. They leave. Miriam locks the door, then turns the sign. Closed. It is the first time in 11 years she has closed before sunset. People notice. The butcher notices. The tailor notices. The man selling newspapers notices. One closed business is caution. 3 is a pattern. 10 is a neighborhood changing its mind. 15:06. The avenue becomes quieter. Not empty. Quiet. There is a difference. Empty streets mean nobody is there. Quiet streets mean everyone is listening. Children are called indoors. Card games end early. A shoeshine stand folds before the evening crowd. Music from an upstairs window stops in the middle of a song. Silence here is not the absence of life. It is life hiding its face. 15:41. Calvin enters a social club that has paid for protection for more than a decade. The manager recognizes him. He also recognizes the coat. It belonged to the clothing store across town. Nothing about Calvin is hidden. That is the point. Calvin places both hands on the bar. "We're collecting." The manager shakes his head. "This place is spoken for." Calvin looks at the bottles, the tables, the men pretending to read newspapers. Everything is spoken for. He taps the wood until someone speaks louder. 15:58. The manager reaches beneath the bar, not for a weapon, for a telephone. One of the 7 pulls the cord from the wall. No drama, no struggle, just a soft snap. Calvin looks at the dead telephone. "Old men trust wires." He turns toward the room. "We trust feet." Nobody understands the sentence yet. Young arrogance often sounds like philosophy, until the bill arrives. 16:20. They empty the register. They take the safe key. They remove nothing from the safe. Instead, Calvin locks the manager's shoes inside. The men laugh. It is childish, humiliating, deliberate. Violence damages the body. Mockery damages the position. Calvin understands that much. He wants stories, not money. Money can be counted. Stories travel for free. 16:52. The manager walks home in his socks. 3 blocks. Past people who know him. Past businesses he once reassured. Past men who used to lower their voices when he entered. Nobody laughs. That makes it worse. Pity is humiliation, with good manners. 17:16. By late afternoon, the 7 have touched 5 businesses connected to Bumpy Johnson. Not attacked, not destroyed, touched. A register emptied, a car taken, a telephone disabled, a manager sent into the street without shoes. Each act small enough to avoid war, public enough to demand an answer. They are not stealing from Bumpy. They are measuring him. Young men test a reputation the way children test ice. One step, then another, listening for cracks. 17:43. People begin asking the question, not loudly, not directly, at counters, in doorways, inside parked cars. Does Bumpy know? Nobody asks whether he can stop them. Not yet. First comes knowledge, then judgment. A ruler can survive an attack. What he cannot survive is the belief that he did not notice. 1811. Bumpy Johnson is not in an office, not behind a desk, not surrounded by reports. He is sitting in a small restaurant near Lenox Avenue. Corner table, back against the wall. A white tablecloth. A bowl of soup cooling in front of him. He has been there for 34 minutes. He has not looked at the clock. He does not need to. Time is not numbers. It is alignment. The cook moves too quickly. The waiter avoids the windows. 2 tables remain empty during the busiest hour. Something is wrong. A neighborhood speaks through small mistakes. 1818. Bumpy lifts his spoon. Stops. The soup needs salt. The room needs honesty. He asks the waiter, "Who frightened you?" The waiter freezes. 1 second. Then 2. A lie takes preparation. Truth usually arrives immediately. Nobody. Bumpy places the spoon down. Then nobody has become busy. The waiter lowers his eyes. Bumpy does not ask again. Pressure is wasted on men already bending. But 1827. At the table beside him, 2 construction workers speak in whispers. They mention the florist, the pool hall, the social club. They do not say Bumpy's name. They do not know he can hear them. One says, "Maybe the old rules are finished." The other replies, "Rules don't finish. Men stop enforcing them." Bumpy looks at his soup, still cooling. Information does not always arrive in envelopes. Sometimes it sits 6 feet away and believes it is alone. 1836. The restaurant door opens. Cold air enters first. Then Calvin Reed. Then the other 6. Conversation collapses. Forks stop. A chair scrapes once. The waiter grips a tray with both hands. 7 young men. 7 coats. 7 expressions built to look unafraid. They did not come for food. Hunger and ambition walk differently. Bumpy recognizes both. 1839. Calvin sees him. Smiles. The 7 spread through the room. Not tactically, theatrically. 1 blocks the entrance. 2 remain near the bar. The rest walk toward Bumpy's table. They want the restaurant to remember the arrangement. Every witness, every angle, every silence. This is not a meeting. It is a performance. 1841. Calvin stops beside the empty chair opposite Bumpy. "Mr. Johnson," Bumpy continues eating. Calvin looks at the chair. "May I?" Bumpy lifts his eyes. "No." Calvin sits anyway. The room tightens. Insults are rarely in the words. They live in what a man does after hearing them. 1843. The others remain standing. Calvin removes his gloves, places them beside Bumpy's plate. Slowly, like claiming space. Bumpy looks at the gloves, then at Calvin. "You're touching my table." Calvin smiles. "I've been touching a lot of things today." Nobody moves. The sentence lands exactly where Calvin intended. A pool hall, a garage, a store, a club, businesses under Bumpy's protection. He has brought every insult into one room. 1846. Bumpy wipes his mouth with the napkin, folds it once, then again. Calvin watches his hands, looking for age, looking for hesitation. Young men often study the hands of old men. They forget to study the eyes. 1848. Calvin leans back. "We respect what you were." Bumpy says nothing. "You built a name." Nothing. "You kept order." Nothing. Calvin glances around the restaurant. Every face is turned away. Every ear is open. But the city changed. Bumpy finally speaks. "The city always changes." Calvin nods. "Exactly." A man who thinks he has been agreed with stops listening carefully. 1851. Calvin continues. "Your generation had rules, permission, territories, introductions." He smiles. "We don't need any of that." Bumpy looks toward Calvin's men. One is chewing gum. One keeps touching the front of his coat. One is staring too hard at the door. Fear has many disguises. Youth is one of them. 1854. Calvin places one hand on the table. "We came here ourselves. No messengers. No old men speaking for us. We thought you deserved that." Bumpy's eyes remain on the hand. Calvin notices, but does not remove it. Mistakes rarely announce themselves. They simply remain in place too long. 1857. "You're a legend," Calvin says. "That means something. A pause. But it doesn't mean what it used to. Behind the counter, a coffee cup slips from the waiter's hand. It hits the floor, does not break. Nobody looks at it. Even accidents understand when to stay quiet. 1900, Calvin's voice becomes softer. We're prepared to let you leave with dignity. Bumpy looks at him. Leave what? Everything. The word comes easily. Too easily. Calvin has practiced it. You keep your money, your house, your stories. You walk away. And Harlem belongs to men who still have time left. The seven smile. Not all at once. That would look rehearsed. But it is rehearsed. Arrogance also practices. 1904. Bumpy studies Calvin. Not the scar. Not the coat. Not the smile. The breathing. Fast. Controlled badly. Calvin is not calm. He is committed. There is a difference. Calm men can change direction. Committed men usually accelerate toward the wall. 1907. Bumpy looks at the soup, then at the gloves beside it. You finished? Calvin's smile narrows. That depends on your answer. Bumpy places money beneath the edge of the bowl. Exact amount. No tip. Not because of the service. Because the evening is unfinished. He stands. Slowly. Nobody at the table moves. Nobody in the restaurant breathes correctly. 1909. Calvin also stands. He is taller. He wants the room to notice. Height is useful in photographs, less useful in history. Bumpy buttons his coat, then looks at all seven men. One by one. No hurry. Names are unnecessary. Faces are enough. 1911. Calvin speaks again. We prefer that you retire. Bumpy turns toward him. And if I don't? Calvin's men straighten. The restaurant becomes smaller. Calvin smiles for the witnesses. Then we retire you. The words hang between them. Clean, direct, public. The kind of sentence young men enjoy saying, because they have not yet lived through its consequences. 1913. Bumpy reaches toward the table. One of Calvin's men moves his hand beneath his jacket. Bumpy notices. Everyone notices. Bumpy picks up Calvin's gloves. He brushes one small drop of soup from the leather, then places them into Calvin's chest pocket. Calvin's smile disappears. Not for long. Long enough. 1914. Bumpy leans closer. His voice stays low. Only the seven hear him clearly. The problem with new men, a pause, is that they mistake arrival for ownership. He steps away. No threat. No promise. Just a distinction. Arrival. Ownership. Young men rarely understand the distance between them. 1916. Bumpy walks toward the door. The man standing near it does not move. Bumpy stops in front of him. The young man looks toward Calvin. Calvin gives no signal. 1 second. 2. Then the young man steps aside. The restaurant sees it. That matters. A challenge can be spoken loudly, but surrender often happens with one shoe, moving 6 inches. 1918. Bumpy exits. No bodyguards. No confrontation. No answer given. Behind him, the restaurant remains silent. Calvin turns toward the witnesses. He laughs, a little too loudly. See? Nobody responds. Calvin spreads his hands. The old lion walked away. Still nothing. He mistakes their silence for agreement. Men often hear what their pride requires. 1922. Outside, Bumpy stops beneath the restaurant awning. Rain has started. Thin, cold. The avenue shines beneath streetlights. A taxi passes. A newspaper turns in the gutter. Through the window, he can see Calvin talking, performing, celebrating a victory that has not yet been measured. Bumpy does not look angry. Anger is movement without direction. He looks precise. 1925. Miriam Shaw, the florist, stands beneath the neighboring awning. She is carrying a broom and a box of broken glass. She sees Bumpy. He sees the cut on her hand. Neither asks what happened. Some questions insult the answer. Miriam says, "They're coming back tomorrow." Bumpy looks toward her closed shop. "What time?" "2." He nods. Not yes, not no, just alignment. 1927. Miriam studies him. "Are the old rules finished?" Bumpy looks through the rain. At the butcher shop, the darkened bakery, the social club, the streets that have gone quiet too early. Then he says, "Rules only look old to men who haven't paid for breaking them." Miriam waits for more. There is none. Real decisions are usually shorter than explanations. 1931. Bumpy walks north. Alone. Behind him, laughter escapes from the restaurant. Ahead of him, Harlem closes one lock after another. A city can tolerate criminals. It can tolerate fear. It can even tolerate change. What it cannot tolerate for long is confusion over who decides the price. 7 young men believe they have challenged an old man. Bumpy understands the truth. They have challenged the memory of an entire neighborhood. Memory is patient, and patience becomes dangerous when it finally chooses a time. 7:04, morning arrives. Nobody mentions the restaurant. Not directly. People speak about weather, coffee, baseball, anything except 7 young men. Fear changes conversations before it changes decisions. 7:26. Calvin walks through Harlem smiling. He expects eyes, whispers, respect. Instead, people look away too quickly. A neighborhood that refuses to look usually knows something. 7:51. The butcher opens on time. The florist sweeps broken glass. The bakery smells of fresh bread again. Everything appears normal. Normal is often the best disguise. 8:18. A boy runs through the avenue, one folded piece of paper in his hand. He gives it to no one. He drops it onto a newspaper stand, keeps running. An old man unfolds it, reads one sentence, folds it again, leaves. 5 minutes later, the paper is gone. Rumors travel faster when nobody owns them. 8:47. By noon, everyone has heard it. Nobody knows who started it. Nobody can repeat the exact words, but every version ends the same way. $500. For any member of the 7, alive or dead, nobody knows. The sentence changes every hour. Only the number never changes. Truth is flexible. Numbers are stubborn. 9:14. Calvin laughs. His men laugh louder. 500? That's all? An old man counting pennies. One of them lights a cigarette. Another throws the paper into a trash can. They keep laughing. Mockery is confidence pretending it cannot bleed. 9:42. Calvin orders breakfast. Extra coffee, extra bacon, extra toast. He eats slowly, as if nothing in Harlem has changed. His youngest man doesn't touch his plate. He keeps looking toward the window. The appetite usually leaves first. Reason leaves later. 10:03. A taxi stops outside. Nobody gets out. Nobody gets in. It waits, then drives away. One of the 7 watches it disappear. He says nothing. The smallest doubts often arrive without words. 10:31. The first man misses a meeting. Nobody worries. He is usually late. 30 minutes pass. Still nothing. An hour. No answer. No call. No message. Calvin shrugs. He's sleeping. Confidence always invents comfortable explanations. 11:02. The second man says he is going to collect money from 2 stores. He leaves alone. Bright blue tie, black overcoat, silver lighter in his pocket. Several people see him walking south. Nobody sees him return. 11:38. By afternoon, only 5 remain together. Calvin still refuses to react. Let them disappear. They'll come back. His voice sounds steady. His fingers do not. Hands betray what mouths protect. 12:09. The police receive 2 missing person reports. Not from family, not from friends. from frightened business owners. The detective asks the same question. When did you last see them? Nobody gives the same answer. Fear ruins memory. 12:44. Harlem continues working. Customers enter stores again. Children return to the sidewalks. Music returns to open windows. The city breathes easier, only slightly. Hope always returns before proof. 13:18. Calvin notices something strange. Nobody insults them anymore. Nobody argues. Nobody refuses. People simply step aside, too quickly, as though avoiding something invisible. Sometimes, respect and avoidance are opposites. Sometimes, they're warnings. 13:57. One of his men finally asks the question, "What if the rumor worked?" Calvin looks at him. "Against us?" Silence. The question remains on the table. Questions survive longer than answers. 14:33. A white envelope waits on the hood of Calvin's car. No stamp, no address. His name is written by hand. Perfect handwriting. No fingerprints. Inside, one sheet, one sentence. I spent only $1,000. You still don't know what to do. Nothing else. No signature, no threat, no explanation. The shortest letters usually take the longest to understand. 15:11. Nobody speaks. The paper passes from one hand to another. Each man reads it twice. One laughs. The laugh dies quickly. Nobody joins him. A joke needs certainty. Fear rarely shares it. 15:46. Calvin tears the letter into pieces. Small pieces. Very small. He throws them into the wind. Paper disappears easily. Ideas don't. 16:08. Across Harlem. People begin counting. 7. Now 5. Nobody says the missing men are dead. Nobody says they are alive. The unknown frightens people more than certainty ever could. 16:42. Late afternoon. Police discover 2 bodies near the river. No identification. Faces impossible to recognize. The newspapers receive only one sentence. Identification pending. Nothing more. Sometimes, the absence of information becomes the headline. 17:21. Calvin reads the newspaper twice, then folds it, exactly the way he folded newspapers yesterday. The motion is identical. The confidence isn't. Routine cannot calm a mind already changing. 18:03. Night arrives earlier than usual. Clouds cover Harlem. Streetlights reflect on wet pavement. The 7. Now the 5. Choose another restaurant. Nobody inside welcomes them. Nobody refuses service. Nobody smiles. Hospitality disappears long before loyalty. 18:49. One of the younger men whispers, "We should leave the city." Nobody answers. Calvin hears him, pretends he doesn't. Leaders often ignore the first honest sentence in the room. It is usually the most expensive mistake. 19:22. Calvin finishes his drink, places cash on the table, looks at every face beside him. We end this tonight. No discussion, no vote, no alternatives. When the head falls, the body follows. He stands. We're going to Bumpy Johnson. Not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. Confidence has changed. Yesterday it wanted attention. Tonight, it wants survival. 20:01 across Harlem. Bumpy Johnson sits alone. Not in his office, not at home. An empty park bench, a chessboard beside him. One black king remains standing. Every other piece has been removed. He looks at the board, not moving, not speaking. The oldest victories are planned before the first move is noticed. 2017. A young boy approaches, places a folded newspaper beside Bumpy, then walks away. No words. Bumpy never opens it. He already knows what is inside. Information loses value once timing has been decided. 2046. Rain begins again, soft, steady. Harlem grows quiet, not frightened, waiting. There is a difference. Even the city can feel when something is about to end. 2108. 5 cars leave different parts of Harlem, different routes, one destination. Nobody follows them. Nobody tries to stop them. Sometimes, the longest night begins without a single gunshot. 2117. 5 cars move through Harlem. No headlights flashing, no engines racing, no shouting. The city watches them pass. Curtains move, windows close. Nobody follows. Curiosity is cheap. Survival is expensive. 2141. Calvin drives alone. He wanted it that way. Leaders like to believe they are being hunted. It makes them feel important. Tonight, he cannot tell whether he is hunting or arriving exactly where someone expected him. 2203. The streets become quieter, almost empty, not because people are sleeping, because doors have already been locked. Harlem has made a decision. Sometimes a neighborhood votes without saying a single word. 2228. The 5 cars stop. Bumpy's house. No lights upstairs. No movement behind the curtains. No guards outside. One of the younger men smiles. I told you. He's alone. Calvin says nothing. The easiest victories usually hide the most expensive mistakes. 2244. The front door isn't locked. It opens with one hand. Nobody forced it. Nobody needed to. One by one, they enter. Boots against old wood. Heavy breathing. Hands inside coats. The hallway is empty. The living room is empty. The kitchen is empty. An open house is rarely an unprotected one. 2302. Calvin raises one hand. Everyone stops. A clock somewhere inside the house continues ticking. Nothing else. Silence fills every room. Silence isn't always the absence of people. Sometimes, it's the sound of people waiting. 2317. They continue upstairs. One room, empty. Second room, empty. Third room, empty. The youngest man laughs. He's gone. Nobody joins him. Relief often sounds forced. 2331. A voice comes from below. Calm, older, clear. You looked upstairs first. Calvin freezes. He knows the voice. Slowly, they return toward the staircase. 2339. Bumpy Johnson is sitting in the dining room. A single lamp above the table. A cup of coffee, still warm. No weapon in his hands. No anger on his face. Only patience. The rarest kind of confidence is the one that never needs to stand up. 2344. Calvin smiles. There you are. Bumpy nods. I've been here all evening. No fear, no rush, no explanation. Only certainty. 2347. The 5 spread around the room, exactly as they practiced. One near the kitchen, one beside the hallway, 2 behind Calvin. No exits, or so they believe. Young men count doors. Old men count decisions. 2352. Calvin steps closer. I gave you a chance. Bumpy looks at him. No, you gave yourself one. The room grows still. Truth usually arrives quietly. 2356. Calvin reaches inside his coat. Not quickly, confidently, before his hand comes back out. A knock sounds at the front door. One knock, nothing more. Everyone turns. Even for a second. Distraction doesn't create mistakes. It reveals them. 2358. Another knock, then another, not loud, not impatient. Calvin signals one of his men. See who it is. The door opens. Nobody is there, only a plain brown envelope. His man picks it up, brings it inside. 001. Calvin opens it. One sheet of paper. 8 names. The first 2 already crossed out. Below them, 5 names remain, his own included. At the bottom, 1 sentence. The reward expires at sunrise. No signature. None needed. 003. For the first time, Calvin looks at his own men. Really looks. Not as followers. As men worth $500 each. He notices things he ignored before. One avoids eye contact. Another is sweating. Another has quietly stepped farther away. Suspicion enters a room, much faster than trust. 0005. Nobody speaks. Nobody reaches for a weapon. 5 men. 5 rewards. 5 opportunities. Greed has ended stronger crews than bullets ever did. 007. One man takes a single step backward. Another notices. His hand moves beneath his coat, not toward Bumpy, toward the man beside him. Calvin sees it. Too late. The room has already changed. The enemy is no longer obvious. 009. Bumpy slowly stands. He buttons his coat, picks up his hat, finishes the last sip of coffee. Nobody stops him. Nobody even looks at him. Every pair of eyes remains fixed on someone else. Power isn't making men obey. Power is deciding what they fear. 011. Bumpy walks to the front door. He opens it. Cold night air enters the house. Before stepping outside, he speaks without turning around. You thought Harlem belonged to whoever carried the biggest gun. A pause. It belongs to whoever decides where the gun points. He leaves. The door closes behind him. 014. No witness ever agreed on what happened next. Some said they heard shouting. Others remembered only one gunshot. A few swore the house remained completely silent. The police found no answers, only questions. Questions survive longer than evidence. 6:42 morning. 5 cars still stand outside the house. Doors open, engines cold. The front door swings gently in the wind. Inside, nobody. No bodies, no blood, no broken furniture, nothing. Only one empty coffee cup on the dining table, still standing exactly where Bumpy left it. 7-Eleven Harlem opens again. The butcher unlocks his shop. The florist places fresh flowers outside. The bakery fills with the smell of warm bread. Children return to the sidewalks. The music comes back. The city breathes normally again. Nothing had been announced. Nothing had been explained. Yet everyone understood the same thing. The 7 had come to retire an old lion. Instead, they disappeared into a story that nobody could prove. And Harlem remembered another rule: a reputation built over decades can never be measured by the confidence of one loud night.